The highlights. Tonight, IEBC commissioners who supervised the 2022 general election remain divided, with the Wafula Chebukati-led faction giving the National Dialogue Committee a wide berth.
It is our fervent hope that in due course, a commission of inquiry will be set up to investigate the unfortunate incidences of August 15, 2022 at Bomas of Kenya, which brought the image of our country into disrepute.
And the government is unclear on specific measures to put in place to combat the effects of the expected El Nino rains, with just hours to the anticipated start.
We do not wish to lose lives and livelihoods. We do not wish to see the 1997 El Nino situation.
And former Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai calls for a reduction of the 290 constituencies to 100 and the scrapping of the women reps position, terming it a costly affair to the taxpayer.
That we have too many people in parliament. We have too many constituencies, so that we should be reducing constituencies, not increasing.
Good evening and welcome to the news. The four former Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission commissioners, popularly known as the Cherera 4, have finally revealed reasons behind their resignation from the commission. They also recounted the events of August the 15th, 2022, before, during and after the announcement of the presidential results. As Mike Kagongo reports, the four ex-commissioners gave their submissions during the Bipartisan committee meeting, they did say this, that they were forced to resign before Cherera and Masit went abroad because of security reasons. This, of course, is the story that we have in store for you this evening. Mike Kagongo, take it away.
The fifth day of receiving submissions from individual Kenyans and various groups by Kenya Kwanza Azimio Bipartisan Committee on Thursday.
We are where we are.
Former IEBC commissioners said they did not resign under their own volition after the 2022 polls.
The Cherera 4 were forced to resign. It was never our intention to resign.
Masit informed the committee that she was currently in exile after choosing not to resign with other members of the Cherera 4 and going before a tribunal that ultimately recommended her dismissal.
Our voice to disown the result has brought a lot of economic, social, negative impact to ourselves and to our families.
Wanderi asserted that Cherera, Masit, Nyang'aya and himself were denied access to Form 34C, which is the presidential results form, and that Professor Abdi Guliye and the Commission's CEO Marjan Hussein Marjan were among those handpicked to conduct the tallying.
34C is the result. Now looking at the document, and we asked, Mr. Chairman, how do I know? What he said is this: the law gives me the responsibility to announce.
I asked about this 2 times, and the chairman said that he was busy tallying. And this tallying, he was doing it alone with selected few. So all of us, even me as the vice chair, was kept out of this information.
He claimed that it was within their authority to do so because the Court of Appeal had determined that the commissioners would tally the results with the aid of clerks and the chairperson would announce the presidential results in the case of Maina Kiai versus IEBC in 2017. But that was not the case because they were not given the chance to do so.
The law gives me the responsibility to announce and declare results. And we said, but you can only do that from what we have verified. And we didn't actually know what had been verified.
Appearing before the committee virtually, Masit said up to now they don't know who won the presidential contest. Cherera said they up to date continue to reject the results of the 2022 election, which should be audited.
The statements that were being issued were not commission statements. The chairman did them alone.
When it became clear that there will be demonstrations against their behavior, Cherera stated that she resigned for good of the nation. The four rejected the results announced by the then IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati on August 15, 2022.
Ruto William Samoei.
Mike Kagwango, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, still along the same lines, earlier today, the former commissioners of the IEBC, who were set to present memoranda to the National Dialogue Committee. However, as fate would have it, the split that presented itself back during the election time persisted way after their tenure, as Wafula Chebukati, Abdi Guliye and Boya Molu said that they will not be participating in the submissions. George Maringa with more.
Identify persons responsible for those atrocities, and thereafter appropriate punishment should be meted out. The outcome of such an inquiry will bolster the independence of IEBC.
That was leader of majority and co-chairperson of the National Dialogue Committee, Kimani Ichung'wah, reading out a joint signed letter by former chairman of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, former Commissioner Professor Abdi Guliye, and former Commissioner Boya Molu. The two-page letter, which Chebukati later shared on his verified X handle, indicated that they won't be appearing before the National Dialogue Committee to discuss issues that have already been resolved. In their words, participating would be to betray IEBC staff who were tortured and murdered, and a reward for impunity. Instead, they want a commission of inquiry formed.
Be careful where you go.
Professor Guliye, in an exclusive interview with TV47 on 31st July 2023, spilled the beans on what led to the split of the IEBC commissioners.
It is at that point that we started having divergence of opinion on the final results. The message was from these four guys, don't announce Ruto as the winner. Should he be the winner? If you can't announce otherwise, then force a runoff. I mean, that was the message.
Chebukati, Molu, Guliye, and Commission's CEO Marjan Hussein Marjan have been on record saying that the election was free and fair. Will their recommendations be taken into consideration? Time will tell. George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, George. Now, 3 petitioners have moved to the High Court seeking orders to have the National Dialogue Committee declared illegal for failing to enact a legal framework to guide the process, which they argue is not inclusive or participatory. The petitioners, Issa Chamau, Patrick Karani and Paul Kirui, now want the court to issue an injunction stopping the ongoing process until the Attorney General, Professor Justin Muturi, and Parliament enacts a law 6 months from the day of the court ruling. Now, the Directorate of Immigration Services under the Ministry of Interior has Thursday announced that more passports are now available for collection at the Immigration Office. This is after the application was made. I beg your pardon, I need to do this again. I beg your indulgence. The Directorate of Immigration Services under the Ministry of Interior has today, Thursday, announced that more passports are available for collection at the Immigration Office where the application was made. And as Grace Kuria Kanja now tells us, this is week 2 of the Rapid Results Initiative on delivery of the passport.
You are advised to collect your passport at the office you submitted your application as soon as possible, according to the Directorate of Immigration Services. A total of 14,954 passports are now ready for collection countrywide and should be collected between the 2nd and the 6th of October. The Directorate breaks the close to 15,000 figure to 7,501 in Nairobi, 1,540 in Eldoret, 1,072 in Embu, 1,479 in Kisii, 1,602 in Kisumu, 1,160 in Mombasa, and 1,000 in Nakuru. However, there is a problem.
It's a bit difficult, it's entrenched, but we have a resolve. We've already done some modest effort at immigration. We are at 10%. We are at 10%, 90% to go. So the problem is bigger than we actually realize. So I accept. Likewise, and this is not unique for the Kenya prisons, we have a corruption problem as a country.
Now, for ease of service, passports will be issued to a specified number of applicants per day throughout the 30 days RRI period. According to the Directorate, the names of passport applicants to be served on each day of RRI Week 2 are listed on their website and X account at Immigration Department. In the past weeks, Kindiki cautioned persons who failed to pick their documents within the stipulated period and at the expiry of the due notice, saying they will have their passports disposed in accordance with the law and penalized when making a future application. Grace Kuriakanja, TV47.
In other news, the former Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai has called for a reduction of the country's 290 constituencies. He says the country has too many leaders who are costing the taxpayer a lot of money. Professor Muigai, who appeared before the National Dialogue Committee, says that the constituencies should be reduced to 100 and the position of women representatives scrapped. The proposals are likely to be met with resistance, of course, as calls to increase electoral units and counties continue to mount ahead of the boundaries delimitation exercise. Apollo Kamau with more.
We have never seen a situation.
Former Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai stirred the hornet's nest when he appeared before the National Dialogue Committee on his radical proposals touching on the country's electoral units and parliament. Professor Muigai faulting the current setup of 290 constituencies, proposing a remove of 190 constituencies to reduce the cost burden on the taxpayer.
That we have too many people in parliament. We have too many constituencies, so that we should be reducing constituencies, not increasing. We have too many counties. We should reduce counties, not increase counties. They are costing us a lot of money, and quite a number of them are not viable.
Professor Muigai going further to propose the scrapping of the woman representative post, which will be compensated in the 100 constituencies, where a constituency will have a male and female MP.
To abolish the seat of the woman representative completely, and then to create 2 seats in every constituency, one for a woman and one for a man. In fact, we end up with 50% being women. We improve. We do better than the 30% that we already have.
The former AG's proposal is likely to elicit hostility from a section of leaders and Kenyans who are currently agitating for an increase of the country's constituencies and counties during the much-awaited boundaries delimitation exercise.
To do away with 190 constituencies, wouldn't you think that is disenfranchising our people?
We're not disenfranchising people.
A bill by Kuria East MP Maro Kitayama has proposed the creation of 5 additional counties: Kuria County, East Pokot, Mount Elgon, Teso and Mwingi counties. The former AG also revealed the intrigues of increasing electoral units during the 2004 Bomas draft, with counties pegged at 14, only for politicians to change tune and cap them at 41. Apul Kamau, TV47.
Now, former Turkana Governor Josephat Nanok could be on the EACC radar over allegations of public finance mismanagement during his tenure as county governor. The Senate County Public Accounts Committee has accused the former regime of embezzling over 1.2 billion shillings, funds meant for various projects, leaving them stalled. The Moses Kajwang-led committee has termed it a scene of crime, coming to the conclusion of the Senate sittings in Turkana. Political affairs have been, the TV47 political affairs team has been following this and now reports from Lodwar, Turkana County.
3 stalled key projects in Turkana County have caught the attention of the Senate County Public Accounts Committee during their inspection tour of the projects. This uncompleted building, meant to house the county headquarters offices in Lodwar, is said to have cost 800 million shillings so far. The project has stalled for 8 years now, senators putting the contractor on notice.
This project was supposed actually to be completed with about 600 million Kenya shillings, but it was varied to over 829 million. That to me is a very serious offense. But this thing was perpetrated by the regime that left.
This other stalled project was supposed to be official governor's residence at cost of 200 million shillings. It has remained like this for 7 years.
The only thing we can celebrate is the resilience of the people of Turkana, but not the efforts of the county government of Turkana over the last 10 years.
Another stalled project is the county speaker's office at the county headquarters. Not sure when the building will be complete. This is despite of billions being channeled in the county every financial year. All these projects started by former Turkana Governor Josephat Nanok could be under siege as the committee can conclude one thing about that regime.
The stalled projects, the state of financial mismanagement that we have seen in Turkana over the last 10 years, I think we could reach the conclusion that this is a crime scene.
Now, former Governor Nanok could be in corruptions agency EACC radar as Senate wants the commission to intervene.
We are here with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We want them to take an interest and take time to find out what happened with the 100 billion that came to Turkana.
We want to start in a new slate, and we need support by this committee and even the entire Senate, so that we are able to put our money in our new budget into work.
Perhaps the only project that seemed to have been completed is the fire station in Lodwar. All this comes in the wake of 7 billion pending bills, which after scrutiny by the current regime, it emerged to be a pending bill of only 2 billion shillings.
Turkana now has new leadership, and we want to encourage the governor to take control. We want to encourage the governor to be firm, so that we don't seem just to be investing in things for the bosses and things for the political classes.
Elizabeth Mutuko, TV47, Lodwar, Turkana.
And on that note, we take a short break. We'll be right back with more content for you. Please don't go away.
It's bigger. Hourly cash wins. It's the Lotto Metamania. It's raining millions every hour. See your Lotto. Cheza Lotto Metamania. Ushinde 1 million every hour. Isitoshe, kuna mega grand draw ya hadi 200 million shillings kila Jumatano na Jumamosi. Cheza Lotto sasa. Timiza ndoto zako. Nenda kwa M-Pesa paybill number 77700. Andika neno chapa kama account name. Cheza la kati shilingi 50 hadi shilingi 2000 na ushinde sasa. Raundi hii ni more draws, more cash. The Lotto Metamania is here.
Over 18s only. Gaming can be addictive. Play responsibly. This message has been approved by the BCLB.
we ask a question, is Kenya ready for El Nino? Well, the government, through the Ministry of Arid and Semi-Arid Lands, says that it will require 9 billion shillings to mitigate the effects of the expected El Nino rains, with the counties saying they will require 15 billion shillings for possible emergencies. In a meeting convened by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, an estimated 2.3 million Kenyans, this actually emerged from that meeting that an estimated 2.3 million Kenyans will be affected by the oncoming El Nino rains out of the ASAL counties, that is the arid and semi-arid counties, where 23 out of the 27 counties will be severely affected. Moige William has more details from this meeting.
With just hours before October, the projected start of El Nino rains in Kenya, the government still seems far from having a watertight plan on how to mitigate effects of the phenomenon which caused over 2,000 deaths and hundreds of thousands of displacements 26 years ago. In a meeting that brought together players in the El Nino response chain, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua fell short of explaining what particular measures the government has deployed to reduce negative impacts, especially among the most vulnerable.
We do not wish to lose lives and livelihoods. We do not wish to see the 1997 El Nino situation, which more than 1.5 million people were displaced and negatively affected.
And with over half of the country on high risk, it is emerging that some 24 billion shillings will be needed to combat effects of El Nino in both the national and county governments. Counties in the arid and semi-arid lands will be greatly affected, being 23 out of the 27 counties, where in the meeting it was also noted that over 2.3 million people and 5.6 livestock will be affected by the heavy rains.
Preparedness activities have begun, but should also continue seamlessly throughout the rainfall season.
The floods that are expected to come with El Nino will also see learning activities interrupted in 1,215 schools, with 314 health facilities also facing closure.
Several parts of the country are already receiving rains beyond usual quantities. This will intensify and extend up to early 2024.
Further, the climatic phenomenon is expected to affect a total of 100,195 hectares of land and 1,234 water facilities across the country. The government estimates the cost of El Nino response to be around 9.322 billion shillings. The Council of Governors Chairperson Anne Waiguru, however, says counties only have reserves of 1 billion earmarked to mitigate anticipated impacts, expecting the rains to cause devastating effects to the society.
We're expecting it to cause devastating effects to many of our communities. In response planning, Your Excellency, the county governments have been coordinating a response mechanism.
As of Thursday, September 28th, only 23 counties had submitted their plans to mitigate El Nino effects.
Two levels of government are not in competition. They complement each other for the common good of the people of Kenya. So let our national administration officers work very closely with our county governors.
The meeting convened by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, though painting a bleak situation courtesy of El Nino, but stakeholders in attendance exuding confidence with proper planning, the country can mitigate the situation. Now the challenge that lays ahead is mobilizing resources. Moige William, TV47 at Karen, Nairobi.
Now, the world has been anxiously waiting for a HIV vaccine. However, nothing has developed on this end for over 40 years since the virus emerged. But there are emerging technologies like the pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, post-exposure prophylaxis, and the vaginal ring that have led to a gradual reduction of HIV cases globally. Our health and science reporter Elizabeth Atieno now reports on the gains made in the fight against HIV and why there is a delay in the development of an HIV vaccine.
It is now 39 years since Kenya reported its first case of HIV in 1984. As of now, 1.4 million people are currently living with the virus. 4 decades later, scientists and researchers around the world are yet to find a HIV vaccine. This despite the research funding.
Over time, we have seen donor funding is dwindling over time. And it's important for us to appreciate that donors, no matter how much they support the country's program, will not be here forever.
Hopes for the availability of a HIV vaccine by 2030 have also been dashed. Scientists argue that HIV is a shape-shifting virus, hence the virus changes and escapes any vaccines developed. Additionally, there are different clades of HIV, hence a vaccine developed for clade A may not work against clade B or clade C.
A lot of research happening in the country right now, and I think Kenya has been a pioneer as far as innovation is concerned. So some of this research, for example, around pharmacy platforms as potential delivery avenues.
But some innovations are currently at play, not only in Kenya but around the world. For instance, in 2018, the government commenced the rollout of pre-exposure prophylaxis (PrEP) drugs as an additional prevention option for those at high risk of HIV by 99%. There is also the vaginal ring, currently on a 5-year trial to be conducted in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. The ring is made of silicone material that releases regulated amount of antiretroviral drug over a 28-day period.
We are still shy of that. So far, we are seeing about 360,000 people who have initiated PrEP. So certainly, yes, good progress, but still a lot needs to be done.
There have been more than 250 HIV vaccine trials, most of them early stage. However, only 10 or so vaccine trials advanced to the point of looking at efficacy.
But also there are issues around regulatory barriers, like injectable cabotegravir, for example, has not been approved by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board yet.
There have been 5 alleged cases of people being cured of HIV, the recent one being that of a 53-year-old man from Germany who was allegedly cured after a stem cell transplant.
Is in terms of fast-tracking the removal of regulatory barriers to make sure that most of these products are included within their country-specific guidelines.
Early this month, the countries of Denmark and Australia announced plans for a HIV vaccine trial set to commence late this year. If this vaccine is the much-awaited magic bullet in the cure for HIV, then it will undergo trial in the country of Denmark, then scale up, and finally the rollout, which will target those at the highest risk. Children won't be the first to receive vaccine due to safety and durability of efficacy. The scientists recommend that those aged 15 and older will be prioritized in getting vaccinated before they become sexually active. For now, nations around the world are waiting with zeal and anxiety to see if this vaccine is going to be the cure for HIV. Elizabeth Atieno, TV47.
Now, earlier on, we told you the story of senators touring Turkana County on a fact-finding mission and what came out of that meeting. Something else did come out of that meeting as well. Now, at least 50 senators who attended the Senate Mashinani sittings have been forced to spend the night in Turkana County. This is after their flight back to the capital developed mechanical problems just before takeoff. The incident raised questions on the safety of elected officials and the impact of what would be the worst-case scenario if the worst happened. Paul Kirobi with that speculation.
6:30 p.m., but that notwithstanding, it has been a successful...
After 4 days of the third session of Senate Mashinani sittings held in Lodwar, Turkana County, it was time to get back to the capital for the senators. Over 50 senators trooped to the Lodwar airstrip to catch a flight home, 18 of them allied to the Kenya Kwanza Brigade, rushing to be in attendance at the UDA National Governing Council meeting, scheduled to take place at the Bomas of Kenya on Friday. What they didn't know is that they won't be making it out of Turkana today. It is reported that the pilot of this plane, which was supposed to fly them back to the capital, noticed mechanical challenges on the runway, forcing him to abort the flight. This raised questions on the safety of the senators and the planning that was put in place for their travel, considering that air travel is considered the safest. Sources indicate Speaker Amason Kingi, who is also said to be on board, had to call the president informing him about the mechanical problem the plane developed. Senators and a section of government officers were forced to be stranded for a while. Another question that came up is whether the plane had been thoroughly checked before senators would board it. Tonight, senators lucky to be alive and questions on safety of air travel. Paul Kirobi, TV47.
Now let's have a look at business news. And economic growth in the last year has almost halved. That means it's cut to half, from about 7.6% to 4.8%. This is pushed by a 22% growth in the cost of basic commodities. This means that the common Mwananchi can no longer afford basic food necessities after its inflation averaged at 13.1%. The Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis says that this is due to an immense growth in overall inflation rates, high cost of food and fuel, as well as the general disruption of the global supply chain.
Overall inflation, which is driven by exchange rate depreciation and other macroeconomic factors, averaged at 7.7% in 2022. This is compared to an average of 6.1% in 2021, the increase skyrocketing the cost of imported goods and services, which ultimately hikes the cost of domestic goods of the average citizen.
It is timely for policymakers because we are all seeking for evidence-based policy options to guide policy decisions to address the high cost of living.
But we have seen that in the year 2022, it averaged about 7.7%, which was outside the government band.
According to Kipra, Kenyans spend 54.3% of their income on food, and increase in food prices reduces the purchasing power and therefore limits the quantity and quality of food purchased and consumed by households. However, in the same period, the services and industry sectors grew by 7% and by 3.9% respectively, while the agriculture sector contracted by 1.6% in 2022 due to consecutive failed rainy seasons and high input costs.
The Institute selects a theme on a current and emerging policy issue, while considering the implications of the regional and global socio-economic developments.
The research authority now recommends strengthening of the minimum wage policy in the informal sector, as well as alignment of the minimum wage with the current cost of living. Hibak Said for TV47 Nairobi.
We now take a short break. When we come back on Insight tonight, we're going to be talking about food safety. How safe is what is on your plate tonight if you're having dinner right about now? Let us know what you think about this particular topic. I hope you'll plug in and listen in and ask your questions to the expert that we're having in the studio tonight. Her name is Charity Gakuo, and she's going to be talking to us once again about food safety. All that and so much more after the break. The news that matters the most is the one that hits close to home. When disasters strike, we are there to inform you. When the bullets are flying, we tell you who's shooting and why. Reporting on your victories, your health, your money, your security, your past, present, and future. We are interested in telling the stories of creativity, hard work, and resilience that you are known for. That is our job. This is my job. My name is Victor Moyakane, and it's my honor to bring you this news this way every Thursday night on the home of Untold Stories.
Katika majengo haya, hapa ndipo sheria zinapotungwa na zinapopakuliwa. Nitakuletea viongozi mbalimbali, mirengo mbalimbali, wote kwa pamoja wakipika na kupakua. Tutawapa nafasi kuweza kuangazia changamoto na mafanikio ya ugatuzi katika ukumbi wa siasa kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia saa 1 kamili na kuendelea.
Toka eneo hili la Naivasha kwenye kaunti 032, gatuzi la Nakuru.
Kutoka kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet, kaunti 028.
Nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Wajir.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Turkana.
Kwa matukio yote yanayojiri katika kaunti hii 012.
Kutoka kaunti nambari 1, kaunti ya Mombasa.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Lamu.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka Kisii County.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Machakos.
Kutoka kaunti hii ya Trans Nzoia.
Kaunti 038.
Kutoka gatuzi nambari 029, kaunti ya Nandi, chemichemi ya mabingwa.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Kakamega.
Itakuwa nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Bungoma.
Jina langu ni Paula Munio.
Willy Dennis Jiru.
Fabian Kibet.
Mimi ni Hashim Jimal.
Mimi ni Kitio Mika Masai.
John Javakiania.
Jina langu ni Abdulaziz Nameka.
Mimi ni Kombo Alfayo.
Jina langu ni Nicholas Mbai.
Isaac Famba.
Mimi ni Wanji Sosti.
Jina langu ni Arnold Adidi.
Jina langu ni Chris Bet.
Jina langu ni Violet Auma.
Na TV47 inapotamba, mimi Sheila Chelangat nitakuwa nikiripotia maswala yanayokuhusu wewe kila kuchao. Every Thursday 7:30 p.m. unapata nafasi kufahamu viongozi mbalimbali kutoka humu nchini, kuanzia wabunge.
Through Changa we could get money to pay our rent, pay our bills.
When I was growing up, water was a problem where I was born and bred. We wake up at 3 to go.
438-629 to learn more about our services and book your event.
Well, good evening, and as I promised in the insight, we have a food safety specialist. She wears a few other hats, and that description is not quite as accurate as it needs to be, but for all intents and purposes, basically speaking, this is what she has a lot of expertise about, and she's going to be sharing all that expertise with us tonight. The topic tonight is on food safety. How is your food grown, starting from the seed? How is it planted? How is it looked after? How is it harvested and stored right after? How is it prepared? How is it served? On what sort of environment are you going to be consuming this food? I imagine those are some of the things we're going to be trying to answer on the conversation around food safety. But who am I? I'll leave it to the expert. Good evening, Charity.
Good evening.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Tell me and tell the Kenyans who are watching, first of all, first things first, what do you actually do?
Okay, my name is Charity Gako. I have a background of agronomy. Agronomy is the production of food, and later now went on and started working towards food safety. So food safety is ensuring the entire chain is safe. Right. So as food safety is literally described, is just to ensure, our work is to ensure that actually people consume safe food, and safe food is food that is not contaminated with either bacterial, viral, chemical, physical items that can actually make food unsafe.
All
So
right.
that's what I do.
Brilliant.
I just ensure that your food is safe.
So we've got KDF fighting to protect the country
Right.
from enemies within and without.
Yeah.
We've got the Kenya Police fighting to protect the general society and the peace. And then we've got Charity protecting what's on your plate.
Your plate.
I hope you get the kudos that you deserve. Tell me something. A lot of Kenyans right now are more focused on finding the food. Do you think enough attention is given to how safe the food is?
So that has been a line that has been very thin to actually build towards, because we are working towards sustainability. We are working to ensure that we actually have the food before it's safe. And sometimes we try to balance the two, because we talk about food being unsafe, but there is no enough. There is no food security.
Right.
So the truth is, we need to, first of all, build on food sustainability, that's food security, as we still build on food safety.
Right.
That way now you are able to convince someone that you actually need to eat food safe food when you are sure that you're going to have your plate.
I see.
So the truth is, yes, there is a possibility, or rather we might actually eat food that is not safe, because one, we have no option, or two, we do not have the knowledge of understanding how safe my food is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you said something earlier that was quite interesting to me. Your background is in agronomy, the production of food. Talk to me about how we actually plant our food. There's some concerns about that.
Okay. So every crop is dependent on what we call its anchor. So because of technology now, we have stopped relying on soil, and now people are going to water, something called hydroponics.
Yes.
Other people are depending on air, which is aeroponics. But the plant is dependent on its anchor. So in Kenya, because we have a lot of arable land, the highest percentage of anchorage of the plant is the soil.
Is the soil. Most farmers plant in the soil.
Definitely. So the problem is now this soil.
I see.
Soil is life, and this is what I mean by life. It has microorganisms. These are actually worms inside the soil that actually make the soil one, aeration. So soil needs to breathe. The gaseous exchange needs to occur in soil. Number two, soil needs moisture. Soil will require these microorganisms to actually produce what we're calling about the nutrition, or rather the nutrients. So what has happened over the years down this is that the soil has begun to lose life.
Right. And why is that? Men have actually contributed to the death of our soils. We're actually saying our soils are dead. Wow.
This is because, one, we have overutilized chemical fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers are nutrient-based fertilizers, right? They only produce nutrients. They have no organic matter. They have no humus. The only thing
they have no life.
They don't have life. So the microorganisms don't have anything to feed on.
So it takes life to produce life.
Absolutely.
And the chemicals we're using do not have life in them. In fact, they kill the life.
That's the thing. So the microorganisms will lack food to feed on, and they will die. So that means your soil is not aerated. That's why you find your soil is a bit clamped up. So it's becoming even hard to plow. Your soil has no enough moisture. So you have to rely on water for your plant to grow.
Right.
And your plant, number three, your soil has no nutrients, because there is no production of nutrients through something because of the humus. You know, there's the organic matter, it's broken down, and there's production of nutrients.
Right.
So we have left to over-rely on chemical fertilizers. So there's this danger, because the crop grows by the nutrients. So the crop only grows by the nutrients you give. Each crop requires a certain nutrient. For example, maize requires 200 kilograms of nitrogen. So the crop will only grow to optimally if you give it 200. For example, in maize, 200 kilograms of pure nitrogen. So what is happening, because now the soil has no capability of producing its own nutrients, we are overpumping the soils with chemical fertilizers.
Right.
And this is a challenge with chemical fertilizers. They are not compatible with the soil.
Right.
So the crop will take the nutrients at that point. And this is what we do. For example, CAN will top dress twice in the season.
Right.
And nitrogen is required over a period of time. So anytime you put in the nitrogen, the maize will pick up the nitrogen it requires at that point. And the rest is leached because it's not compatible with the soil. So it's leached and goes to the water bodies.
Wow. Okay. This is starting to sound like a biological horror film.
Yes.
So here we are. In a nutshell, we're planting wrong.
That's it. So the problem is the soil.
The soil.
The soil is dead.
Okay.
That's where the unsafe food begins.
I like that. And on that particular note, I want to give our audience a little bit of a breather to absorb the information that we've just had. Folks, we are planting our food in the absolute wrong way. We are relying more on the chemicals to plant our food. It's killing our soil, and life needs to produce life, and without any life, the food we're producing becomes deadly. We'll answer that question after the break. The news that matters the most is the one that hits close to home. When disasters strike, we are there to inform you. When the bullets are flying, we tell you who's shooting and why. Reporting on your victories, your health, your money, your security, your past, present, and future. We are interested in telling the stories of creativity, hard work, and resilience that you are known for. That is our job. This is my job. My name is Victor Moyakane, and it's my honor to bring you this news this way every Thursday night on the home of Untold Stories.
Katika majengo haya, hapa ndipo sheria zinapotungwa na zinapopakuliwa. Nitakuletea viongozi mbalimbali, mirengo mbalimbali, wote kwa pamoja wakipika na kupakua. Tutawapa nafasi kuweza kuangazia changamoto na mafanikio ya ugatuzi katika ukumbi wa siasa kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia saa 1 kamili na kuendelea.
Toka eneo hili la Naivasha kwenye kaunti 032, gatuzi la Nakuru.
Kutoka kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet, kaunti 028.
Nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Wajir.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Turkana.
Kwa matukio yote yanayojiri katika kaunti hii 012.
Kutoka kaunti nambari 1, kaunti ya Mombasa.
Over 18s only. Gaming can be addictive. Play responsibly. This message has been approved by the BCLB.
If you are joining us right now on Insight, we are drawing insight onto the subject of food security. And my guest tonight is Charity Gakuo, who's a food specialist, particularly in the area of food safety, among other things. Now, we're following the food, the food chain, starting from, you've heard this statement, farm to fork, right? So we're doing exactly that. So we've just talked about how this food actually comes into being, the soil.
Yes.
So now the next step is the crop itself. Where does what about how we grow our crops creates a problem of food safety?
All right, so we know the quote of garbage in, garbage out. So your soil is now contaminated.
Okay.
And now your plant picks up what is contaminated.
Okay, wow.
So as your plant grows, it's now becoming toxic and becoming contaminated. Right. The problem with heavy metals is you cannot drain them away with water, after harvesting.
And by heavy metals, you mean?
The ones in the chemical fertilizer.
The ones in the chemical fertilizer.
Because you have over-fertilized. They're not producing something called so many nitrates that are not being converted into nitrites. They're toxic. They're toxic substances.
So it doesn't go away easily. No. It stays in the soil.
And this is the same way, when we are planting with sewage water from the industries. So all these things are in your soil.
So those very healthy looking sukuma wiki are quite unhealthy.
Absolutely. So So the garbage in the soil is picked up by the crop, and the crop will definitely grow to its this beautiful, nice crop, and we will definitely go harvest.
Okay.
So
now the
first step
crop
of soil, that was where you took the
soil
first
is contaminated.
hazard. The crop has taken up the hazard, and now you're harvesting. Now this is the third stage of hazard or toxicity. So you harvest your crop, for example, picking up tomatoes. One of the things that you have not observed, something we call PHI. PHI is pre-harvest intervals. So you have sprayed your tomatoes with a pesticide to control pests.
Yes.
And you need to wait for 14 days before you harvest.
Yes.
But you have harvested it at the 7th day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Earlier than you're supposed to.
Earlier than you're supposed to. The other hazard is you're actually using already prohibited pesticide in Kenya. We're having those things. Actually, I know this is one of the biggest problems.
Oh yes, it's a big problem.
We are actually having pesticides that have been banned in other countries in Kenya. And we are now putting them in our food. And most of these pesticides are something we call systemic. They get right into the system of the plant. So you have harvested an already contaminated
crop
through its system. Number two, it's how you handle your food when harvesting.
Okay.
Are you harvesting and placing them on the floor? Because most of the time you'll see when you're harvesting.
We harvest tomatoes, maize, we put them on the ground.
And we sort them on the ground.
Sometimes even on tarmac.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You harvest your spinach, your cabbages, and place them on the soil. And even us who are harvesting, maybe just came out from somewhere with so many, you came from washing and there was so much detergent on you actually handled food.
Okay.
So at harvest point,
contamination happens.
Lots of contamination.
Wow.
There needs to be regulation. Place them on a clean cloth. You don't have to really invest, but you just ensure that the place you actually exposing this food is clean.
Okay.
I know the analogy of farmers is, this is what goes to the Nairobi people.
Yes.
And this is what goes to home. And so they do not care. And the problem in the notion that has come out from people is they are looking for the best white, red tomato.
Yes, the biggest ones, the ones that look good.
Nice leafy spinach. And we are actually forcing our farmers to actually go towards that direction.
I see.
Because they need money, but we are forcing them to go to a direction that is actually hazardous.
So they do it because of market forces?
Absolutely. Demand what the people want.
So we've got this plant. Soil is horrible. The plant has grown up in a horrible way. It's been harvested in a very hazardous way.
Absolutely.
What's the next step?
Transport.
Wow.
So the farmer needs to transport to the Nairobi children.
Right. To the market, to the cities.
Market.
Yes.
So we'll use lorries.
Okay.
I once remember there was a lorry that came to carry stones and they came to carry produce.
The same lorry?
Same lorry. So you're talking about lots of cross-contamination. We're talking about lorries that have not been well inspected and there's already shedding of paint. And this paint is chemical and it's toxic.
And it gets into the food.
We're talking about food being transported from Busia or in Kakamega, the spinach and the nice kienyeji, coming all the way to Nairobi. The dust,
the
elements, covered.
Yeah, the sun, everything.
It's been a whole 6 hours of drive, and this crop has just been attracting so much dirt and contamination throughout the journey.
Wow. So the transportation, of course, is problematic.
It needs to be regulated.
It needs to be regulated.
Generally, we need to transport vegetables in a clean, in a cooler, well preserved, so that there is no contamination. If you're not able to actually get the cooler, you need to actually clean your lorry, ensure there is no deposits of paint, and ensure it's covered.
Right.
If you're bringing in seeds, for example, you may be coming up from for example, Kambani, the temperatures are quite high, so the cereals are well dried. But as you transport them towards the highland, the seeds begin to accumulate moisture.
The moisture, yes.
So what is happening? Aflatoxin. So transportation really needs to be sorted out because this is a place where we have...
It's a weak link.
Yes.
All right. So we've got this chain, and so far there's weak links across. So after transportation, what's the next step?
Retail.
Retail. It's in the markets. and supermarkets and the mama mboga around the corner. What's the hazard there? What's the danger there?
I think supermarkets have really tried because, well, the place is attracting a certain kind of clientele, and they're quick to clean up and ensure they produce this best crop.
Okay.
But I think the highest challenge is in the open markets.
Okay.
I appreciate the government is beginning to, bring up modern markets, and that is good. But there is a bit of a hitch, a challenge. There is no flowing water.
In many of our markets across the country, right?
So even cleaning the product is just dipping into a bucket,
shaking it off, and that's it.
And you're shaking it off to a place where it's already that. So you so even what was not contaminated becomes contaminated in that.
I see.
Number two, you'll find a whole dump site in a market. The rotten and the fruit that have gone bad are piled in a place, and there's so many rats, and that's a hazard. Number three, you'll find farmers, retailers are a bit shrewd a bit, So you realize the tomatoes are becoming degrading, and you'll want to mix the degraded one with the new one, and share it with you and sell it to your
customers, unsuspecting customers.
Absolutely. And so this that was already because you see, as the crop begins to degrade, there are bacteria that form into the crop and everything. So you will actually transfer what was not.
Wow.
Charity, problem.
Hold on. This is getting depressing. Okay, so how many more steps before it gets to my mouth?
Just one.
One more, which is?
Now you go to the market and
I go to the market. I buy this thing that has gone through all these stages. Quick as you can. What are the dangers there now? And I hope you're paying attention, good people, and I hope you're picking up where the challenge is, and hopefully with the little time that we have left, Charity will give us some tips, some takeaways about how we can create some safety around our food. So clearly we've learned about the soil, that we need not to overtax it, over-fertilize it. We've learned that garbage in, garbage out. If we put garbage in the soil or in the environment where our food is growing, then our food is going to be garbage. We've learned that it needs to be harvested properly, and as we harvest it, there's risk of making it even more toxic. We've learned that in the transportation bit, there's also problems. The vehicles we transport our food in, the environments, and all of that. We've learned that in the retail section, where we're buying and selling the food, there's lots of dangers and what we need to do about it. Now the food is at home. In our home, we've bought it, here we are, it's in our kitchens. Can you give us something that we can, some tips that we can do, things we can do to handle our food in a better way?
All right, so
because by this point we're already compromised, good people, aren't we? So how can we rescue this? How can we?
One of the greatest challenges at homes is something we call cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is transferring contaminants from one crop to another. A few tips I'll give you at home.
Okay.
Try get semi-raw vegetables.
What does that mean?
That means don't get your tomatoes when they're very ready.
So not red, like ready to be used right away.
Try get the orange just before they are ready.
Okay.
And put them on a shelf. Don't put them on the fridge. Put them on a shelf and allow them to ripen.
Okay.
This means that the pesticide that was in the tomato will begin to degrade, and you'll eat a bit safer food than before.
Okay.
Number two, wash your vegetables on running water. Don't put your vegetables on a basin and wash everything in the
same water,
because you'll cross-contaminate.
Okay. Running water, a tap.
Running water.
Preferably.
If you do not have a tap, take a jug and just wash your vegetables on running water.
Okay.
Number three, every time you finish chopping a certain vegetable, please wash your knife. Please wash your chopping board.
Right.
Because it will avoid cross-contamination. If you were cutting your meat and it had bacteria, the bacteria will actually die when you're cooking. But if you do not wash the knife that you are cutting with your meat well and actually chop your tomatoes, then the bacteria might be transferred to the tomato. And the heat that you're exposing your tomatoes to is not the same as the heat you're exposing to your meat.
Okay.
So try and wash your equipment right after when changing to the next one.
Okay.
Number 3, clean your surfaces. Just clean your surfaces.
Okay.
Sometimes the food is not dirty, but your surfaces are contaminated.
So what do you mean by surfaces? Is this the counter?
The counters, yeah.
The chopping board?
That's it. Clean your surfaces.
Right.
If you're able to, use disinfectants, but food grade.
Okay.
Disinfectants.
Okay.
Don't use soap, because hand wash soaps, bathing soaps have chemicals that are toxic to human body.
Hold on. We shouldn't use regular soap.
No, it should be food grade soap.
Food grade soap.
You'll rather not use the soap and use water, but don't use regular soap.
I think that's a really important thing, good people. Food grade soap or no soap at all.
Yes.
Okay. Any more things you can give us real quick?
Be clean, you know. Women tie your hair to avoid falling off of your hair.
Into the food.
Into the food. Wash. Ensure your nails are clean. You know, it's okay to have nice nails, but ensure your nails are, you know, clean. You know, if you're able to wear an apron, just do that, because what we're trying to avoid is cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination. I think that's a really good place to pause this conversation. I understand that this is a huge subject. I mean, you went to school for years for this.
Yes.
So clearly there's a lot more content.
Right.
And I understand we may not have enough time to really delve deep into it. Consider this an introduction to food safety, and we'll have Charity back here again to now delve deeper into the details, the nitty-gritties, the farmers, the transporters, the retailers, and the consumers, all of that. By the way, just before we finish, they say this is street wisdom.
All right.
That unless your Mutura person has dirt under his fingernails, that Mutura is not sweet. So you're telling us cross-contamination.
Well, we can a bit compromise on Mutura.
Thank you so much. Now, good people, thank you so much, Charity.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Victor.
for the wisdom and insight you've been able to give us tonight on Insight. We hope to have you again and give us a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, up next is the great Ahmed Bahaj, and I've seen a number of people in the studio. The show is VAR, and tonight they're talking about disciplined violence. To understand what that means, after this, my name is Victor Muyakane. Our sign language interpreter was Catherine Simaloy, and our guest tonight was Charity Gakuo. Thank you to the crew behind the scenes, Christine, Charles, Nick, and Tony, as well as Ken Kazungu and Collins, who made this bulletin a reality, as well as many others who did this. Thank you so much. Have a good night. May God bless you.